amid growing concerns about economic growth.
Consumer spending was
As
soft.
expected, cut interest rates another quarter point.
We are following breaking news. All three major American stock markets have closed down.
Bitcoin rose 10%.
Even gave the stock market a temporary second wind.
The market reaction, it was kind of nonplussed.
Tariffs going into effect tomorrow.
But the NASDAQ was also...
Investors will be watching closely for more clues about the direction.
It's time to tune out the noise and tune in to great information with a steward's view. Expect valuable economic updates, investing techniques, and planning concepts that move you to be wise and decide well. You'll be equipped and encouraged in a stewardship mindset, managing God's resources one week at a time. You can listen to this podcast and previous episodes at astewardsview.com.
Welcome back. I'm Aaron Kolkman. That's Chaz Louder. Here is Paul Larsen, and this is A Steward's View. So glad you joined us again. Remember to visit this and previous episodes online at astewardsview.com or on your favorite podcast platform. As we continue this weekly series called Living Stewardship with Paul Larsen, we'll not focus on economic and market readouts, and instead we'll be on contextual conversations about day-to-day decision-making as stewards, the people this program is designed to encourage. This series does tie economics, investments, and planning into these larger daily life conversations, but it really hones in on the promises of money versus the promises of God, or the gospel of money versus the gospel of the kingdom. So now let's get going. Paul, welcome back.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
In our last episode, we defined and described stewardism as a mindset. We talked about work and started a conversation about legacy. I'd like to talk a little bit today, and I know you would, really around the concept of work and how we're working now in 2025. The headlines are telling us that AI, that's artificial intelligence, is everywhere. It seems both amazing and uncertain. How might we steward artificial intelligence is the kind of general question that I'm bringing. But what are your thoughts, first of all, about what's going on?
Well, first of all, I hope that Christian stewards are amazed with this AI. Starting in the 50s, people wanted to see if they could make computers think like humans, even indistinguishable from humans. And they did this by creating algorithms or sets of rules for computers to follow to come to a conclusion, right? But then about 20 years ago, people started using a new approach. They called it deep learning, which attempts to create God's design of the human brain. And it turns out we can create a blank slate of neurons and then treat a computer like a baby and train it based on data. And what we end up with is software described in the industry as a neural net. It's much closer to human intelligence than ever before, but with a speed advantage over humans, since electricity on a circuit board is more than 100 times faster than our electrochemical brain. But of course, God is still the ultimate creator, and we're always subservient to him, as well as all of our inventions, right? But he has enabled us to create things that can grant us tremendous capacity to aid us in doing what we're supposed to do, which is be fruitful, multiply, and subdue or steward all of creation for his glory.
So artificial intelligence comes along in recent years and seems to change things so quickly. Do you think that AI is something to fear?
Oh, I wouldn't say fear it, but we need to be thoughtful because it's a powerful technology. It kind of reminds me of when scientists at the Manhattan Project created the atomic bomb. Well, when the first tests were done, all of a sudden it became real. People realized what they'd created. And it's kind of the same with AI. And whoever is ahead in this new technology race is going to have a powerful edge over those who are behind. So we can't drop it and forget about it and ignore it. But we need to be responsible with it and what we use it for. But keep in mind, it's far from perfect. Sort of like when humans created the first bridge. It inevitably fell down and people got hurt. But then we learned from that and got better at building bridges. And of course, jobs are going to shift because of this, but that's not for the first time either. When we first invented tractors, we displaced 3/4 of the agricultural labor force. And eventually, only 2% of our population is now engaged with agriculture, while the rest of us typically get too much to eat. So we could see that kind of displacement over time, but is that bad? According to various credible studies, now listen to this, AI could replace humans in 85 million jobs. 85 million jobs replaced, but it could easily create 97 million new jobs. So one thing we can be sure of is our kids, most of our kids are going to be doing jobs that aren't even named yet. So that's one thing to keep in mind as we raise children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. We're also going to anticipate substantial quality of life improvements. If a robot running on AI could do chores around the house and provide basic care, wouldn't that be a huge help to older people who are struggling, around to get around, or working parents trying to stay on top of housework? And I would say to that, this is just in time.
What do you mean by that?
Well, our country and much of the developed world is getting older. And there's a lot more to discuss about these demographic changes that we'll get to later. But for now, let me say, there are literally not enough younger folks pursuing careers that will allow them to care for a growing population of elderly. But back to AI. AI can be asked to explain things to you, which further accelerates our access to knowledge. And like how the internet made information more accessible to those who couldn't get to libraries or didn't know how to search through swaths of books. But of course, all these changes come with trade-offs. But for many, the benefits outweigh the consequences. But it's not easy. We'll always need to remember that AI's deep learning is shaped both by the people coding it and by the data fed into it. And in that way, it's like theologically we're imputing both our knowledge but our sinful nature into these models. So Christian stewards who find themselves in the middle of developing these tools need to be thinking, what's the best way to develop this ethically? What's the best way to develop this in a way that will benefit humanity and hopefully bring them closer to God? How can we love God and glorify Him and love our neighbor as ourselves through these tools? How can we take all these things captive in God's plan to grow His kingdom?
And haven't we faced challenges like this before?
Sure. I mean, I remember when the internet was first taking hold, one of the first industries that made massive profits was pornography. And people asked me at the time whether any good could come from the internet, because this is what they heard or saw or knew. My answer was that anything that can take the friction out of communication, anything that can take the friction out of communicating the love of God can prove extremely useful. I use the example of the incredible network of high-quality roads that the ancient Romans built. Okay? Now, they used these to conquer and murder and steal and dominate. But the Apostle Paul came along and used these very same roads to quickly expand the spread of the gospel across 2 continents in a very short amount of time. So we can take these tools that were meant for one thing and we can redeem them.
Interesting. So let's talk more about how we can consider the stewardship of artificial intelligence. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, I think there's 2 things to remember and a few things we might find valuable to do as well. But let's remember that, number one, God is sovereign and can easily appropriate machines for His general benevolence and purpose. Okay? But number 2, we need to remember, as helpful as AI may prove to be, it will not replace humans and should not become an idol. We should not look to AI to meet our needs and bring us joy. Only Jesus Christ can do that. But AI can sort and deliver information much faster than humans. And so in some definitions, it may become more intelligent, but it does not have an immortal spirit. And even if AI could somehow worship God, right? Remember, Luke tells us that even the rocks will cry out and worship, right? There'll be a day like that. But even then, AI will never have the same relationship with God that humans do. And of course, Genesis 1:27 and 28 says that humans are made in God's image and called to exercise dominion over creation. This includes the remarkable capacity for creativity and innovation that sets us apart from the rest of creation. God does not intend for our job to be taken over by machines, but clearly creating machines that can give us capacity is certainly appropriate. So when we develop new technologies, from the wheel or the printing press or to the internet or AI, we're actually exercising this God-given calling to be co-creators and stewards. AI systems, for all their sophistication, remain tools created by humans to extend human capabilities. They process information, they recognize patterns, they automate tasks, but they lack consciousness and moral agency and the creative spark that comes from being made in God's image. And as the psalmist reminds us in Psalm 8:5, humans are crowned with glory and honor and a dignity that no algorithm could ever replicate or replace.
Jobs. You talked earlier, I want to talk about jobs for a moment. You talked earlier, Paul, about the dissipation of current job types and the addition of new job types in the millions. And I won't try to repeat those exact numbers, but you're in the tens of millions. So, Paul, what about jobs?
Pattern recognition, but it struggles with emotional intelligence, creative problem solving, ethical reasoning, and complex communication. So invest in developing these skills in you and in your family. Number 3, focus on relationship building and communication. Okay. Conversations about ethical reasoning and moral judgment. Learn about leadership and team collaboration. And learn to work with AI, not against it. I think the most successful professionals in the next decade will be those who learn to collaborate effectively with AI systems. Mm. And you can start by doing that. You can start doing that now. It means understanding what AI can and cannot do, learning to use AI tools to enhance your productivity, developing skills in prompting, training, and managing AI systems. They still need to be managed, right? Maintaining human oversight of AI-generated work. So try to think of AI as a highly capable research assistant, not just a dictionary to look up stuff, okay? It's like an assistant or like an analytical tool. It can help you do your job better. It's not one that's just going to replace you entirely.
Interesting. And so, Paul, I think this is a great time for us to take a pause. We're going to take a break here and come right back and talk a little bit more about jobs in relation to this idea that we have artificial intelligence to steward. And we'll be right back.
Rural Music Fest is back, and this year features Seth Schluter, August 22nd through the 24th at Redemption Hill in Isle, Minnesota. Sing along with Sanctus Real. It's the 4th annual Rural Music Fest with bounce houses for the kids, food trucks, raffles and prizes, and music from over 15 Christian artists like Grammy Award winner Dante Bowe. And closing this year's Rural Music Fest, Colton Dixon. It's the Rural Music Fest, August 22nd through the 24th. Learn about camping, volunteering, see the entire lineup, and RSVP for this free event at ruralmusic.org.
And we're back with Paul Larsen. I'm so glad that we could get together with Paul this week. We're talking right now about the idea that artificial intelligence is something that could be stewarded. It's around us. It's moving quickly. It is new. There's plenty of uncertainty with it. Paul is here, and we're diving into these topics in that general category of stewardism that we talked about last week as we continue in this weekly series called Living Stewardship with Paul Larsen. Paul is the Chief Stewardship Officer at Fidere Advisors, and you can find him online at fidereadvice.com. That's Fidere Advice, Fidere advice.com/Larsen. And so, Paul, as we go into this second segment now, we pause there and we're into jobs and the idea that, well, maybe, I won't have the same job or the same set of skills as before. What more would you like to touch on in regards to this conversation about our current work and vocational life and how AI affects it?
I'm hearing from a lot of friends and fellow believers that are 50, maybe 50 and up. Is AI going to take my job? Well, the anxiety is real, right? The headlines are dramatic, and I'm sure that the uncertainty feels overwhelming. But as Christians, we have something unique to offer this conversation. We have a framework for understanding technological change that goes beyond fear. We have a theology of work, innovation, and human dignity that can guide us through this rapid transformation. Before we dive into these practical concerns, let's establish that artificial intelligence is not fundamentally different than any other tool that humans use. Now, I'm not going to try to tell you how to prepare to advance in your particular job. Maybe there's an opportunity for some counsel on that. But we need to understand that God gave us the idea of jobs. He gave us work. Okay, that wasn't the curse. And so God is going to continue to give us opportunities to use our humanness to create value in the world. Okay? So we can learn from history that technological disruption is generally good news. Never at the time, but in looking back, we see that. We've been in this situation multiple times. Remember, back in the 70s, if you remember, automated teller machines, ATMs. Oh my goodness, the bank tellers were all up in arms. They thought we weren't going to need bank tellers anymore. Well, those people got some extra training, and now they're involved with customer service and sales. It's a much more rewarding job. Okay, and these same people were able to morph into that, right? We talked a little bit about mechanized farm equipment and what that did. But then I remember in the 80s, pundits were warning that spreadsheets, back then it was Lotus 1, 2, 3, but now we have Excel, right? Well, that's just going to finish it off for accountants. We weren't going to need accountants anymore, but guess what? The profession grew. As a matter of fact, now we have more people retiring than going into accountancy, and it's creating a squeeze. Okay? It didn't finish off accountants. It just allowed them to be more consultative. Okay? I remember barcode scanners. Grocery clerks didn't like that. It sped out checkouts so much that they expanded and created more cashier and inventory management jobs. It did take some additional training, but these were people that were used to seeing inventory go past their face every day, and now they become very valuable in inventory control. That's one of the reasons why retail has got such tiny little margins, because we can keep right on top of inventory. And they were in a good position to move into that role. So history keeps teaching the same lesson: new tools automate tasks, but they also enlarge the economic pie and open fresh avenues for human ingenuity. And that pattern isn't accidental, by the way. It actually reflects how markets work and how humans adapt. When technology makes us more productive, it creates wealth. And when it eliminates mundane tasks, it frees us to pursue higher value and even higher satisfaction activities. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the key insight is this: technology doesn't just substitute for human labor, it complements human labor. AI is not going to replace humans. It's going to augment our capabilities in ways that make them more valuable, not less. And I think one more thing, Aaron, I think we need to be careful not to fall into a scarcity mindset or or a fixed pie mindset.
So how do we apply the mindset of abundance compared with the mindset of scarcity when we talk about AI?
Well, I think the augmentation and supplementation that AI could drive economic growth that enriches everyone. My many estimates agree that advances in generative AI, all by itself, could give individual Americans $5,000 to $10,000 more in their pockets in the next 10 years.
Per year?
Yes. So does not that free up more and more resources for kingdom flourishing in whatever form that means?
Absolutely. I think I should go out and buy a robot.
Well, we'll address this more detail in the future, but we can't deny that at least materially, the world is becoming more abundant and stands to become even more so. And as believers, however, we stand in the tension. We live in the tension between God's ultimate economy of abundance and the reality of scarcity in a fallen world.
Can you say that again, please?
As believers, we find ourselves living in the tension between God's ultimate economy of abundance and the reality of scarcity in a fallen world.
Right. That belongs to be printed somewhere. That needs to be printed somewhere. So I'm glad we repeated that. That's incredibly valuable. I have not thought about this, Paul, and I'm almost sure that our listener base hasn't either.
Well, it's an important tension to live in. We don't want to be ignoring the effect of sin and the scarcity and the effect that human selfishness can place. But, I want to be careful about conflating selfishness with self-interest. Self-interest has done a wonderful job in advancing the good and advancing the poor out of poverty. Mm-hmm. Like, we'll have to do a whole time on that, I think, sometimes. But, living in that tension, just remember Jesus overflowing the baskets of bread and fish, or commending servants who grew the talents that were entrusted to them. So we live in a growth-oriented economy. The kingdom economy is a growth-oriented economy. It's not a redistribution economy. Keep that in mind as you evaluate different public policy thoughts and ideas and so on. But, Genesis 3 also reminds us that creation now, at this time, in the present age, yields its fruit by the sweat of our brow. So there is scarcity. There is risk, mainly in the form of trade-offs that remain part of our ordinary life. Christian stewardship, then, isn't naive optimism or a name-it-and-claim-it mentality. It's the sober but hopeful work of using limited resources wisely to create more and trusting God to provide and redeem.
I trust that our listeners find this very helpful. This particular program is recorded on Wednesdays. In our Monday program, the Economics Investment and Planning Program, we're getting in more to One Big Beautiful Bill Act and the growth sources and economic effects in the long run that are ahead. So it'll be interesting when we talk about those things in this context, how, growth is good, both in human terms, right, but also in God's terms.
Absolutely.
So this has been so beneficial, Paul, and thank you. I think we've had a lot of good conversation here. I'm really grateful for your contributions. We've been talking with Paul Larsen. Paul is the Chief Stewardship Officer at Fadir Advisors and a regular contributor to A Steward's View. You can find him at fadiradvice.com/Larsen, Larsen. That's fadiradvice.com. Thank you for joining us again. It's been such a pleasure to be back with you. I hope this session has been a benefit to you and to others you decide to share it with. We do invite you to interact with us online at Apple, Spotify, or Amazon Podcasts, those platforms, or at our new host site, astewardsview.com. From all of us at A Steward's View, we look forward to connecting with you again soon. Until then, please do be wise and decide well.
You've been listening to A Steward's View. To learn more about Fidare Advisors or speak with Aaron, visit fidareadvice.com. That's FIDERE advice.com. To listen to this and other episodes of A Steward's View, visit astewardsview.com. A Steward's View is brought to you by Fidare Advisors, a registered investment advisor offering financial planning and asset aggregation. Asset aggregation systems are designed to align portfolios across accounts into a single, globally optimized investment plan for families it serves. Fidare maintains liquidity of client capital at major custodians and utilizes asset managers that have shown consistent historical performance through excellent risk management. This program is not an offer to transact any securities and does not constitute a financial planning engagement. Information provided has been prepared from sources believed to be reliable, but is not guaranteed and does not represent all available data necessary for making financial decisions and is for informational purposes only. Fidare and its representatives do not offer tax or legal advice through Fidare. Please consult the appropriate advisor. Fidare Advisors LLC is a registered investment advisor. To discuss your situation or to learn more about Fidare, please visit fidareadvice.com. That's FIDERE advice.com.